السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله. السلام عليك يا خيرة الله وابن خيرته. السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين وابن سيد الوصيين.
والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and welcome to episode number 21 of Reflections on Ziyarat Ashura, brought to you by Mizan Institute. Allahumma ij'alni 'indaka wajihan bil Husayn alayhi salam fi ad-dunya wal akhirah. Ya Aba Abdullah, inni ataqarrabu ila Allahi wa ila rasulihi wa ila amir al-mu'minin wa ila Fatimata wa ila al-Hasani wa ilayka bimuwalatik wa bil baraa'ati mimman assasa asasa dhalik وبنى عليه بنيانه وجرى في ظلمه وجوره عليكم وعلى أشياعكم. In our last episode, we discussed the first dua that we have from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which was that He gives us the opportunity and honor to be with the 12th Imam when he avenges the death of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and for us to have something to do with that. Here, the second dua is mentioned. The second thing we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for is Allahumma ij'alni 'indaka wajihan bil Husayn alayhi salam fi dunya wal akhirah. Which means that, oh Allah, I ask you to make me of nobility, of honor, to make me an honorable, noble individual by the right of Imam Hussein, because of your love for Imam Hussein and because I love Imam Hussein so much. As a result of that, you grant me this wish, that I am a noble and honorable individual in this life and in the next. So the question will be, that's not just going to magically happen, of course. We have to do our part, and Allah will do His part. What is our part? Our part, the Quran has, you can say, clearly stated, Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. The most noble among you is the one who has the most taqwa, which will practically mean, brothers and sisters, however you translate this taqwa. Some like to translate it to God-wariness, some like to say God-consciousness, some like to say fear of Allah, etc., etc., piety. In the end though, practically speaking, whoever listens to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala more, starting from the wajib and haram that Allah has legislated for us to observe, starting from that, and moving all the way to even certain mustahabbat, makruhat. Whoever listens to Allah most, this person has more taqwa. And so the verse of the Quran clearly states, Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum, and this is in Surah Hujurat, that the most noble of you is the one who has the most taqwa. So here when we're doing dua, we're saying, oh Allah, allow me to be a noble individual, an honorable individual in this life and in the next, by the right of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Well, that's going to require us to do our part. And I think that this can be tied with what we say later, or tied into what we'll talk about later, where the ziyarat says, Allahumma ij'al mahyaya mahya Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad wa mamati mamata Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Oh Allah, make my life and my death one of Muhammad and al Muhammad salawatullah alayhim ajma'in. So maybe I'll talk about it more there. But here, all we need to know is that, yes, to be noble in this life and in the next, taqwa brings that for us. Honor and izzah and all of these things, they come in this life and in the next as a result of the taqwa that we have throughout our lives. May Allah give us that tawfiq, inshallah. So that is one part of the ziyarat that we wanted to discuss in this episode. But then there's a longer part that I want to also discuss, and that's the next part that I also read in the beginning of this episode. Ya Aba Abdullah, inni ataqarrabu ila Allah wa ila rasulihi wa ila amir al-mu'minin. That, O Aba Abdullah, I seek closeness and proximity to Allah, to His Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa to Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam, to Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam, to Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam, and to you, O Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Through what? Through what do I seek closeness to you all? Bimuwalatik, having your wilayah, seeing you as the imam over me, the authority over me. But that's not all. I seek proximity to all of you through your wilayah, number one, and also wabil baraa'ati ممن أسس أساس ذلك وبنى عليه بنيانه. But also through, I seek closeness to all of you through my disgust, my hate, my disassociation from who? Those who established the foundations, they set the foundations for dhulm and oppression towards you. وَبَنَى عَلَيْهِ بُنْيَانَهُ. And not just the ones who established the foundations, those who built on those foundations as well and continued in their dhulm towards you. جَرَى فِي ظُلْمِهِ وَجَوْرِهِ عَلَيْكُمْ وَعَلَى أَشْيَاعِكُمْ. Those who oppressed you and those who oppressed your followers. بَرِئْتُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَإِلَيْكُمْ مِنْهُمْ. And so it's repeating the same idea that I see, that I disassociate myself and I get closer to Allah through this disassociation, minhum, from them, and I seek closeness to Allah through your muwalat and through your wilayah, all the way till the end, okay? And my hate for your enemies, those who stood against you in battle and war, and my hate towards their followers. إني سلم لمن سالمكم وحرب لمن حاربكم وولي لمن والاكم وعدو لمن عاداكم. And this is also a repetition of what we discussed before, plus a little bit more, where it says that I am at peace with the one who's at peace with you, at war with the one who's at war with you. I am a wali, a friend of the one who is befriending you and has your wilayah, and an enemy of the one who shows animosity towards you. Okay, so let us discuss two things here. Number one has to do with the wilayah of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam and how important that is. I want to share a few hadiths on that with you. And then the second matter that I want to discuss is that wilayah will come with its baggage. It will not just be the fact that, okay, I just accept that the imams are the authority over me. But it's more than that. And I want to share one hadith in that regard, although we have more than one hadith, but just one hadith in that regard as well, to illustrate how wilayah will entail certain things, will have to have an impact on my life practically, or else that wilayah might not do me the good that I'm after, and will not have the desired outcome that I might be after. Okay, so let us begin with the hadiths on the importance of wilayah and how without the wilayah we can't get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are hadiths from the famous book of Usul al-Kafi, of course. And this hadith is a very famous one. بُنِيَ الْإِسْلَامُ عَلَى خَمْسٍ عَلَى الصَّلَاةِ وَالزَّكَاةِ وَالصَّوْمِ وَالْحَجِّ وَالْوَلَايَةِ وَلَمْ يُنَادَ بِشَيْءٍ كَمَا نُودِيَ بِالْوِلَايَةِ. That the Imam, he says that Islam is based on 5 things, on 5 pillars, you can say. Number 1 is salah. Number 2, zakat. Number 3, fasting and Sawm. Number 4, hajj. Number 5, wilayah. And then the Imam adds something here, that wilayah, nothing has been called to the way wilayah has been called to. In other words, it is very, very, very important. So look at this. Wilayah has been put next to things that all Muslims agree on. Hajj, zakat, Sawm, salah. It just shows how important this is, especially when the Imam adds that last line to the end. وَلَمْ يُنَادَ بِشَيْءٍ كَمَا نُودِيَ بِالْوَلَايَةِ. Number 1. So if these are the 5 pillars of the faith, so to speak. Now, when I say pillars, it doesn't mean that these are usul ad-din. I don't want anyone to think that these are usul ad-din. Salat, zakat, Sawm, hajj. These are not usul ad-din. These are furu' ad-din. Right? But all in all, if a person is lacking any of these, then their Islam is going to be very problematic. Lacking them in the sense of at least believing in them. Some people might not always pray on time or pray at all even. It doesn't mean they're not Muslim or that Islam is problematic. Them being Muslim is not problematic necessarily. But if someone doesn't believe in these things at least and know that these are part of the faith, then that's going to be a problem. Now, sometimes wilayah, people haven't heard of it. They don't know. They haven't been convinced with the arguments for wilayah. That's a different story. We're not the judge. Allah is the judge. But if someone knows about wilayah and doesn't accept it, then their Islam is going to be very problematic according to this hadith. Or another hadith. قلت لأبي عبد الله عليه السلام أوقفني على حدود الإيمان. That's the one who's narrating the hadith. He says that I asked the Imam Sadiq alayhi salam to give me the boundaries of Iman. In other words, what is the frame work of Iman? What is that area in which if I'm in that area, I can be called a mu'min, but if I leave that area and those boundaries, then I cannot be called a mu'min anymore. So the Imam says, Shahadatu an la ilaha illallah. To bear witness that there is no Lord but Allah, there is no one to worship but Allah, there is no God but Allah, wa anna Muhammadan Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. And that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi is the messenger of Allah, wal iqrar bima ja'a bihi, and to accept that which he brought from Allah. And then the five prayers, he says, ada'uz zakat, to pay zakat, to fast the holy month of Ramadan, hajjul bayt, hajj, wa walayatu waliyina, wa adawatu aduwina. And the wilayah of those of us who are the walis. And in this context, I would say wali here means authorities. Wa adawatu aduwina, and animosity towards our enemies. So that's another one. Now, to have the wilayah of someone usually will mean, or will definitely mean, that you have lack of wilayah of those who are their enemies, and you have animosity towards their enemies. So some might argue that, yeah, having wilayah equals having baraa'ah from the enemies of that individual. Another hadith, دخل رجل على أبي جعفر, someone entered upon Imam Baqir alayhi salam, and he had with him like a letter or a little paper, معه صحيفة. So Imam Baqir tells him, I know what this is. This letter that you're carrying with you, it is a letter of a person who is mukhasim, who's an enemy of ours. And in that letter, he's asking a question. He's asking about the deen, the religion, that if a person has that religion and faith, then Allah will accept their deeds. In other words, he's asking about those boundaries of Iman again, like we had in the previous hadith. فَقَالَ رَحِمَكَ اللَّهِ, may Allah have mercy upon you, O Imam Baqir. Yes, this is exactly what I'm here for, and I wanted to ask you. So someone has given this individual a letter to ask Imam Baqir this, which is interesting. If they're a mukhasim, and they're a person who's against Imam Baqir, why are they doing this? Maybe he was asking his friend this, and then his friend comes to Imam Baqir with the question. I don't know exactly. Anyway, but this is the point here, that هذا الذي أريد, he says, فقال أبو جعفر, Imam Baqir replies, he says, شهادة أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له, that you believe that there is no God except Allah, He is the only one, لا شريك له, He has no partners, أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وآله, that Muhammad salawatullahi alayhi wa ala alihi is His messenger and His servant, and that you accept what He brought from Allah, وَالْوَلَايَةُ لَنَا أَهْلَ الْبَيْتِ, and to have the wilayah of us Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. So please, we need to pay attention here. It doesn't say having our love. It's more than having our love. It's having our wilayah, which means that you take them as an authority. You accept them as your imam. Once again, I have to repeat this. Just because some people today haven't been convinced or aren't aware of this matter, it doesn't mean that now their faith is going to be problematic. Allah is the judge, but what's for sure is if a person knows yet turns away, then they're going to be in trouble. Knows the truth, knows that they are to be followed, and turns away, then they're going to be in trouble, it seems, based on these hadiths. وَالْبَرَاءَةُ مِنْ عَدُوِّنَا, and to have bara'ah and disassociate themselves from our enemies, to dislike and hate our enemies. وَالتَّسْلِيمُ لِأَمْرِنَا, to be submitted to what we say and whatever our affair is. وَالْوَرَعْ وَالتَّوَاضُعْ, and to have taqwa and to be very careful with the deen and acting upon the deen, and to be humble. وَانْتِظَارُ قَائِمِنَا, and to await the 12th Imam. فَإِنَّ لَنَا دَوْلَةً إِذَا شَاءَ اللَّهُ جَاءَ بِهَا, because there will be a day that we will be the ones in charge whenever Allah wants. And so he's referring to, of course, the doctrine of Mahdiism and Imam Mahdi coming and taking over. Okay, so these three hadiths, and there are more of course, are pointing to how important this wilayah is. And so if we, in Ziyarat Ashura, we say, Ya Aba Abdullah, inni ataqarrabu ila Allah wa ila rasulihi wa ila amir al-mu'minin, all the way till wa ilayka bimuwalatik, that I seek closeness and proximity to Allah and the rest of you through your muwalat and through having your wilayah. It's because of this, because this is part of the faith. We cannot take this out of our beliefs. But now, there will be some who feel that, okay, we have their wilayah, we're good to go. This is where I want to share with you a very important hadith. It's a long hadith, so I'm going to skip some parts of it and just go to the end of the hadith. In this hadith, the Imam is speaking about, Imam Baqir is speaking about how important it is to live up to the expectations of this wilayah that we have of the Imams. If we're going to take them as the authority, if we're going to take them as our role models, as the examples that we're supposed to follow, then if we're not following them, it's going to be a problem. Now, the tone in this hadith is a harsh one. I'm not saying, of course, that if a person has their wilayah but doesn't live up to it fully, that, they're just like a person who doesn't have their wilayah at all. No, that's not what I'm saying. That's not what the Imam seems to be saying either. But it can be a problem. Just look at how the hadith sounds. So the Imam, he starts by saying, Ya Jabir. He's speaking to Jabir. He says, أَيَكْتَفِي مَنْ انْتَحَلَ التَّشَيُّعَ أَن يَقُولَ بِحُبِّنَا أَهْلَ الْبَيْتِ. Is it enough for a person who is an adherent to Tashayyu and Shi'ism? If they're a Shia, for them, is it enough for them to say that, yeah, I love the Ahlul Bayt? He says, فَوَاللَّهِ مَا شِيعَتُنَا إِلَّا مَنِ اتَّقَى اللَّهِ وَأَطَاعَهُ. He says that our Shia are the ones who have taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and obey Him. And if you want to be able to tell who they are, they have humility. When they're entrusted with something, they will deliver on it. They remember Allah a lot. They fast a lot. They pray a lot. They're good to their parents. They're good to their neighbors, of the poor neighbors that they might have, and so the hadith goes on. Recitation of Quran, and they hold back on their tongues. They don't say things about people except for good. They are the ones that their tribes trust, and it goes on and on. And so Jabir, he says, Yabna Rasulullah, we don't know anybody who fits this description today. So he says, the Imam doesn't even respond to that, as if, this is my take on it, as if the Imam is disappointed about this. So he's not even going to address the fact that there aren't too many people that fit this description. He just goes on and says, Ya Jabir, la tadhabanna bika al-madahib. Don't get distracted. حسب الرجل أن يقول أحب عليا وأتولاه ثم لا يكون مع ذلك فعالا. Is it enough for a person to say that I love Ali and that I have his walaya, but then this person doesn't actively get work done, isn't active in their claim of loving Imam Ali? Like, in other words, you have to practice what you're preaching. You have to live up to that love of Ali. Love won't be enough. Someone's got to do the work. No one else is going to do the work for us, brothers and sisters. For me to grow spiritually, I have to put the work in. I have to follow the example of Ali. No one else. If someone else follows the example of Ali, that's going to help them. It's not going to help me. I have to actively do that myself. All right. So the Imam goes on, and then he reaches this point where this is the end of the hadith, where really it shakes an individual who listens to this. It says, Ya Jabir, wallah ma yutaqarrabu ila Allahi tabaraka wa ta'ala illa bil-ta'ah. That, O Jabir, you cannot gain closeness to Allah. Closeness to Allah is not gained except through ta'ah, through obedience to Allah. So brothers and sisters, if we recite in Ziyarat Ashura, inni ataqarrabu ila Allah wa ila rasulihi, all the way till ilayka bimuwalatik, that I seek closeness to Allah through your wilayah, then that will be a wilayah that entails action. Because here in this hadith, Imam al-Baqir is saying closeness to Allah cannot be achieved except through action, through ta'ah and obedience of Allah. So if I'm going to bring Ziyarat Ashura, that part of Ziyarat Ashura, and connect it to this hadith, what I'm going to get out of it is this, that, O Aba Abdullah, by having you as my wali, who is going to show me the way of how I'm supposed to follow Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then by actually carrying that out and following you and what you tell me, I am seeking closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In other words, by getting the roadmap from you, number one, and number two, actually traversing that road, I seek closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have to bring these things together so that we get a good idea of what the whole picture looks like, brothers and sisters. مَا يُتَقَرَّبُ إِلَى اللَّهِ بِالطَّاعَةِ. O Jabir, the Imam says, only through obedience of Allah we can get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But of course, to learn what that ta'ah looks like, what the wajib is, what the haram is, it is through the Imams of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, and of course Prophet of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. We will get it through them because they're the authority and we have their wilayah. But we have to act upon what they taught us. So in other words, love only won't do the job according to this hadith, although we don't want to discount love either. Love of Ahlul Bayt is wonderful. But if someone wants the whole package is love, the wilayah, and also the acting upon what they have told us. Ma ma'ana bara'atun min an-nar. Look at this. Imam Baqir continues, says, us Ahlul Bayt, even we don't have a free pass from out of the hellfire. Like, in other words, even if we don't act upon what we know, we're going to be in trouble too. وَلَا عَلَى اللَّهِ لِأَحَدٍ مِّنْ حُجَّةٍ. No one has any excuse over Allah if they don't do what they're supposed to do. Like, it's not like Allah is related to anyone. Okay? And he's like, okay, you're related to me, so like, I'm going to cut you some slack. No. No one has any excuse. And then this is the last line, which is very scary, but I'll read it. مَنْ كَانَ لِلَّهِ مُطِيعًا فَهُوَ لَنَا وَلِيٌّ. Whoever is obedient to Allah is our wali. وَمَنْ كَانَ لِلَّهِ عَاصِيًا فَهُوَ لَنَا عَدُوٌّ. And if a person disobeys Allah, then they are our enemy. Wow. Now, of course, this doesn't mean that if I messed up, throughout life I mess up and I do tawbah, that it's over, like I'm done, I'm an enemy of Ahlul Bayt. No, I think the Imam is making a point here. That look, the path of disobedience and sin is a path that ends up with this, that you will be an enemy of Ahlul Bayt because you're going to be an enemy of Allah at the end of the day. The path that the Ahlul Bayt want us to take is a path of obedience, or else they have nothing to do with us. But this doesn't mean if I mess up that I don't do tawbah. This doesn't mean that I have to be infallible either. No, I think the point is clear that the Imam is making. وَمَا تُنَالُ وَلَايَتُنَا إِلَّا بِالْعَمَلِ وَالْوَرَعِ. Our wilayah cannot be reached except through amal, action, and wara'. Wara' is that very strict taqwa that one has, that even they might take some precautions sometimes in their lives to make sure that they are on the halal side of things and on the safe side of things. Okay, so going back to the ziyarah as we wrap up, in the ziyarah it says, O Aba Abdullah, I seek closeness to Allah, His Messenger, Amir al-Mu'mineen Fatima, Hassan alayhimus salam, and to you, O Imam Hussein, through your wilayah. This wilayah, brothers and sisters, means that I will take them as the authority. They have the final say in everything. I will take my religion from them. I will take my do's and don'ts and harams and halals from them. But this wilayah that I have of them entails that I actually live up to those things that they have told me to do and to not do. And inshallah, Allah gives us that tawfiq. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين